Hey, welcome back. We are here continuing our wake up conversations here with Peabod. Good buddy. Thanks, man. We're continuing this conversation on mental health, and specifically in our last episode, we talked about just your journey as far as getting help through therapy. You found someone to help you. I like the way you put it. Another person on the team, right?
Yes.
To help you get there. And one of the things you said was, along with finding techniques that are helpful during your journey with anxiety, and then having that community, right? People around you that are part of that team. And as a pastor, I believe, okay, and you can disagree with me if you'd like. You'd be wrong, but you can disagree with me if you like, that the church is has been created, is meant to be a part of that community that should help people in their journey through mental health and healing. That's where I'm at. I believe it to my soul. That's why I'm a pastor. I feel called to push this idea on anyone who'll listen. So where are you in that idea of the church becoming part of that community?
Absolutely. I completely no, I'm just kidding. No, I'm right there with you, man. I think that at its best, like, the church is one of our best earthly hopes for walking through any kind of hardship, and that certainly includes any sort of mental illness or mental health issue. I'm really excited to dig into this today because I think it's a difficult thing to be a Christian, obviously, and sometimes some people watching this podcast might be like, well, that hasn't been my experience with the church. And so I think today what will be cool to explore is, like, we're going to acknowledge there are some things that might happen in church scenarios that are not helpful for your mental health. And then what are we hoping the church can aspire to? What standard are we holding the church to? So
I feel like I have a responsibility. I'm in a position as a leader of a church, of a faith community, and to really state out loud the truth. Okay.
Yes.
And the truth is that the church does have a history of not delivering what it was supposed to deliver. Right. So God's intention, I believe, from the beginning, you look at Acts, as the church has begun after Jesus goes back to heaven after his resurrection. And God says, come together. I'm going to build this community. And we have these beautiful pictures of people just sharing resources together and praying together. And everybody's just like giving money. And it's just a beautiful thing. But even back then there were problems. And today there are problems, right? So I'll just say it directly to you. If you're a person who's experienced a painful situation because of a church, I just want to say I'm sorry. It's not meant to be. It wasn't the way God intended the church to be, and you are deserved an apology. And I hope that you won't turn this episode off and say, like, well, they're talking about the church, I don't want to hear anymore. That you'll give us an opportunity to show you that it can be a good place, and hopefully direct you to a way of finding a faith community that can play that critical role in your mental health journey, helping you through to that healing that you so desperately look for. So I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry for what has happened to you in the hands of the people who supposedly claim to be followers of Christ.
Dude, I think that's so beautifully said. And I know, like, for me, like, I have some church baggage in my story, and I'm at a church I love now, and it's
That's
wonderful.
Awesome.
But if we rewinded a few years, a few years back, hearing that message, if I was watching this podcast, that would have been super helpful to me. I think that something that's been kind of helpful for my own understanding is I think what gets really confusing for people in this conversation is we tend to equate Christians with what God thinks of us too. So we're people. Sure. Christians make mistakes all the time. It's inevitable that at some point in your life, a Christian will hurt your feelings, or offend you, or maybe even worse than that. We don't want that to happen, but we're all broken people, and we still, even with Christ in us, have the ability to hurt somebody.
Yeah.
And so if you kind of zoom out, it's really, well, okay, if we're too close to the situation, it's really easy to be like, this person who says they love Jesus said this thing to me that really messed with how I view myself, or really changed my opinion of the church or what Christians think, and that must be what God thinks of me too.
Right.
And so I feel like kind of our first step into any kind of trust, any even willingness to go there, has to start with like, people aren't God, and right. Praise God for that.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think is important to recognize and remember is that this is I think a lot of people come to a church, and granted, it's a pure motive. Like, mm-hmm. I'm coming to this place that supposedly represents God. God is love. It should be a place of love. So I'm hoping that when I come, exactly what I'm looking for is there, and it'll bring me the solutions that I'm seeking.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Mm-hmm. And I think that's good. The thing that gets forgotten is that this is a relationship experience, right?
Yes.
This is all about relationships, mm-hmm. right? Relationship with God and relationship with each other. Mm-hmm. Relationships are hard.
Yes.
They're messy.
Mm-hmm.
They can get really bad before they get good. Mm-hmm. So you got to come into a situation knowing, like, I'm not coming here for the perfect, easy solution to what I'm going through. Now, I am coming to a place where I'll find a group of people that will wrestle with me, that will help me, that will point me to God, and we'll do it together. As an example, I'll never forget, in my church, we had two brothers mm-hmm. who got mad at each other. There was, and not for stupid reasons. Like, there was actual legitimate, like, issues that they had to work through. And enough phone calls happened with me as pastor and the two of them that I said, hey, let's get a sit down. Yeah. Let's get a sit down, and let's try and see if we can come to a place where we can find some agreement and maybe some forgiveness, healing. So we go to this coffee shop, and I sit down with them. Each of them, we all order our drinks. I'm here. The two of them are sitting facing each other, and the conversation starts, and I'm kind of moderating, trying to help. And at one point, one of them just gets up and says, I'm done. I'm not doing this, and starts walking away. And I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit or because I grew up in New York and have an aggressive countenance or whatever.
Yes.
I just grabbed him. I said,
wow.
I said, no.
Yeah.
This is not what we came here for. We came here to work through this and wrestle through this. Mm. So sit down mm-hmm. and let's keep talking.
Yes.
That was hard.
Mm-hmm.
It was scary for me because I didn't know what the response would be. I didn't know how the person would react. Are we going to get in a fist fight?
Right.
Is the other person going to be like, see, there's the attitude, whatever.
Totally.
And I'm not going to say that was the miracle moment and everything, but it was the start.
Yeah.
Right? And then many conversations later, and there was forgiveness, and there was coming together. And
wow.
And these two men are working together now in ministry.
Wow.
So, but it takes work. It's
yes.
hard.
Yes. Oh man. I think that's a really powerful illustration, because I think that the idea of kind of expecting a quick fix, especially, this whole conversation, we're talking about mental health, and we've established that for most people, this is a healing journey, and it's not usually a quick fix.
No.
God can do anything, but for most people, it's one step forward at a time. And so I think, obviously, coming into church, you can have an expectation like, fix me, church. I think also, similarly to what we've talked about in past episodes, part of that act of what is most loving. I think that the church can sometimes, if they're not intentional about it, they can have this attitude of like, this person has a mental health issue. Let's fix it real quick so we don't have to deal with this anymore. Because sometimes it can be really uncomfortable. Sometimes mental health stuff can impact congregation members, like depending on what's going on in a person's life.
Sure.
If the depression or anxiety or whatever is bad enough, that affects your behavior. And maybe someone's difficult to be around. Maybe they're like really needy because they have high needs.
Sure.
And I'm sure there's a temptation, and you could speak to this more as a pastor. I'm sure sometimes there's probably a piece of you that's like, oh, I wish I could just fix this and my congregation would be so much more at peace if this person just didn't have this problem anymore. And I think that's where a lot of hurt comes in, is people can get pushed to the side if their issue doesn't resolve as quickly, if they don't have a congregation, people around them that are willing to go, we have no expectation for timeline on this. We're just going to walk with you through this.
Here's how I see that in practice come about. When people come to church, usually they're looking for something, and great. That's what we're here for, especially if you're looking for God.
Yeah.
And then there's hopefully there's an enthusiasm, like I came here, I had a good experience. Wow, this church is filled with great people.
Yeah.
And I want to get involved. I want to do something. I want to be a part of this group. And what I've seen people who like will jump into ministry, like, okay, let me get involved in ministry. Let me serve on the hospitality team or refreshments or worship or whatever. And people who are struggling get excited, but they don't have the energy at that point to really dive in all the way.
Right.
And they tend to burn out, a little sooner. And so then the tendency is like, well, I'm not involved in ministry, I'm not supporting, I'm not helping, and I can't because of my whatever issue I'm going through, so never mind. And a church at that point, I think what the church needs to do is say like, hey, let's put the ministry aside. That's not where your value is. Your value is in just who you are as a child of God. And let's help you. Let's help you during this time. Because in the end, if we can support you in your mental health journey, this always can be, picked up again, and you can and even be healthier and do it long term. But we look at people so much for what they can contribute versus what they're taking at the moment, which is probably what they need. And we have to be okay with both of those. And I tell people all the time, like, hey, it's okay that you need help right now. Take the help. We're going to give you the help, because when you get healthy, you're going to then be called by God to help someone else.
Yes.
But at this moment right now, let's just focus on getting you where you need to be.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think that's actually kind of a great example of like, okay, if the one side of maybe an obstacle that keeps people from finding that community and that support in church is the idea that their usefulness is more important to God than the fact that they're his kid.
Yeah.
So in that sense, an unhealthy church experience would say, you're only valuable to us if you're contributing.
Right.
A healthy church experience would say, you are a child of God. You have infinite worth regardless of what you give. And hopefully at some point you'll be in a place where out of that overflow of feeling accepted, knowing that you are loved, then you're able to go, how can I start blessing other people because I've been so blessed by that?
Yeah.
And so I kind of wonder if maybe what would be helpful for people watching at home, I wonder if there's a couple other examples that we can name of like, this is another obstacle that people might experience, and here's what we would hope to see. Here's what the Lord actually says.
The New Testament to me is very clear about this.
Yes.
Okay, there's a couple of concepts when it talks about church, and the church, the the example used in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 12 and other areas, is just the body of Christ, right? So, so the body of Christ is the example it's using. So one thing it says is that it uses the concept of like how the body's stitched together. Yeah. So the body is stitched together, and then there are ligaments, and there's bones, and there's muscles. All of it is together as one body. So all of us who now are part of this church, we're connected.
Yeah.
We're connected. I'm connected to you, you're connected to me, which means a couple things. One is what happens to me happens to you.
Yeah.
Because I'm connected to you, right? So, and then there's the other concept, which is bear one another's burdens. So that means that it's not just the good, like, hey, we're celebrating Milton's great sermon. Well, we're also there when Milton is struggling, right? Same with Isaac and his family. So we are connected for the good and for the bad. The other concept is that there are times when there are weaker parts of the body. The Bible makes this very clear. And those of us who are stronger at that moment, we pull up, we support, we bring with us the weaker sides.
Yes.
So sometimes you're weaker, sometimes you're stronger, and sometimes it's flipped.
Yep.
And either way, it doesn't matter. Those who are doing well help those who are not doing well.
Yeah.
So let me give you a practical example of how this happens. And I argue with my people at my church all the time about this, because I keep hearing it over and over. Well, Pastor, I didn't want to bother you. I didn't call because I didn't want to bother you. I know you're busy. I know you got a lot to do. And they're right. They are absolutely right. I am busy. Okay, you're busy. All of us are busy. We live in America. Duh, okay? But here's what I tell them, and I'm very clear about this. You're supposed to bother me. You're supposed to be a nuisance. And that's okay, because God's calling you to bother me, and then he's calling me to bother you.
Yes.
Because when you are struggling at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're not supposed to be struggling alone.
Yes.
And I tell people over and over, call me, text me. And if I can't do something, I'll tell you I can't do it. Like, I don't have to apologize for that, but let's work together. Let's find the solutions to all these problems, because it's not all on me.
Yes.
Right? So let's bother each other.
Yes.
And be okay with it.
Yes. Yep. I love that. And I think that actually speaks to kind of what we were talking about a couple episodes ago. The idea of like, I have to be strong. I can't show weakness. And oftentimes what ends up happening is people wait until they like, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
And then there's still this apology, like, I'm really sorry to burden you with this thing. And you're like, dude, we're in community.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for.
Right.
I think that's another great example of like, for a lot of people, maybe a barrier to getting more plugged in with the church is maybe in the past they've been in communities that have said, don't bring your stuff. Like, it's not, we don't want to hear it. We're too busy. We got too much going on. Deal with it yourself. Instead of being in a church community that says, we all have stuff going on.
Yeah.
And God gave us each other to help to bear each other's burdens. And so, I think that's right on the money for sure.
And I would encourage, if there's any church leaders that might be watching this episode, I'd encourage them to start creating that atmosphere in their church, because a lot of churches don't have that atmosphere, because if it's uncomfortable, it's hard. If it's hard, I'm not sure I want to do it. We're at a church, the church that I'm pastoring, we decided to start a Celebrate Recovery, which is kind of like a Christian 12-step program. And I think it's great. Now, I do want to say this to any church leaders, and forgive me if this comes off insulting in any way, but here's what I found. Hurt people tend to live in circles of other hurt people.
Sure.
So if you decide as a church leader, let's help hurt people, guess what? More are coming. More are coming.
Yep.
Which is great. Be excited about that, because now you're going to be able to reach so many people who are seeking solutions to their hurts, their hang-ups, all the things that they're struggling with, anxiety, all these things. Because the Bible's very clear. The harvest is ready. Like, the people are out there.
Right.
We just need to find a way to get workers so that they can come. But it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding that I get to see almost every weekend. I get to see people coming, and I make an invitation, like, give your heart to the Lord. Give them everything that's broken inside of you, and people just come.
Yeah.
And then they stay for the meetings, and they're finding the solutions to their issues. But it's work.
Yes.
It's work. And there is the 3:00 in the morning call. And there is the, I can't pay my rent today, or I just lost my job, and all those things that we have to be willing as God's people and the body and the church to be like, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's exactly it. I feel like, the Celebrate Recovery thing is really cool, too, because I think what groups like that do, obviously that's a little different than the mental health thing we're talking about, although they're closely related.
Sure.
I think the really cool thing about, like, formal programs like that is it gives an excuse to, like, with church co-signing, like, branding, pastors saying it, going, this is for you. Like, if this is something you're dealing with, this is for you, and we understand that this is real. And I think that in talking about mental health issues, oftentimes in the church we can feel like, well, I've never heard anyone talk about this from stage. I've never heard this mentioned. And I think this is what you're talking about, where, like, if you open the door to say, hey, if this is a hurt you have, we see you and we want you, and we want to engage in that with you, the floodgates will open, because and certain kinds of hurt, like mental health, oh man, like I think more than ever, more people are going to raise their hand and say, that's me. Right. And then their friends might see them raising their hand and be like, well, that's me too. And so I think that, again, like, if there's leaders watching this, I think that a cool thing is just going, like, just the simple act of occasionally saying, we're acknowledging that people in this room might be struggling today with this thing. And if that's you, we're so sorry. We have people to pray with you. We have these groups we can push you into, these different things. I think acknowledgement of this is a real thing, and we understand that this is really hurting, goes so much further than, like, the bar's pretty low for making people feel seen. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
There is some low-hanging fruit where it's like just having it in your mind to go, I'm just going to mention this. I know sitting in a congregation, like, I've been in church settings where it's like, we don't really talk about mental health stuff. Yeah. And then I've been in church settings where it's something consistent, maybe not every Sunday, but like, it's consistently in the messaging of the church to say, we know this is a demographic and we're here for you. So I think that's really, really awesome, just to go, how can we just take a step forward towards awareness and see what just that willingness to talk about it does, like what God does with it.
Authenticity is such a crucial part in this, especially if you're a church leader. We talked in a previous episode, I don't struggle with the same mental health issues that you do. But the closest I got, and I never sought a professional to know if this was a real thing, but the closest I ever felt to being depressed, I remember once in my ministry, I had wrist surgery. And I had one of those full casts. So my arm had to stay bent like this. So you can imagine, the limitations that did. So, like, I remember one time I went to a restaurant with my family, and we went to a burger place, and I grabbed the burger, and I couldn't get it to my mouth.
Dude.
And I had to ask the waitress to cut it for me so that I could do it one-handed, you know?
Yeah.
But that was just a silly example. But what happened is that limitation became more and more, and it affected more and more of my just the normal day to day. And I remember one time I went to grab a plate in my kitchen, and I just fumbling with it, it fell and it broke. And I got so angry and so sad at the same time that I couldn't just be me because of this stupid thing. And it took me a while to figure out what was going on. And it was that I had a lot other things too. I was doing some extra education, and it was the weight of that was heavy on me because I had to write a dissertation. It was just like all these things were like crashing on my mind at the same time. So I'm limited. I can't type very well. I have this papers due. I have my church responsibilities. It was all coming down on me. And I feel like I was getting depressed. Like I'm gonna fail. Like I'm just gonna fail at everything. And feeling that was embarrassing because I've always been a person like I deliver. I come through. I work hard.
Yeah.
I hit my goals. And it hit me, people need to know that I'm going through this.
Wow.
My church family needs to know. And it took me a lot of like courageous thinking to say like, okay, I'm going to talk about this. But how much that opened up others to be able to say like, yeah. And I'm thinking, I, as pastor, as a leader, I need to be able to stand in front of my congregation, and not that it has to be a therapy session for me, but I need to let them know this is a place where we can talk about these things, and this is a place where you can share your struggles.
Yeah.
No matter who you are and what position. And I have to let my leaders know the same thing and tell them, you guys need to be transparent.
Yes.
When you're struggling, you need to come through and you need to say, this is what's going on.
Yeah. Wow, man. I want to like applaud you because no, but it's
a hard journey, man.
It is hard. And I think that time and time again, when you see someone, like even just someone you look up to, it doesn't have to be your pastor, but someone that you go like, I really respect and admire this person. If that person is just open and transparent about like, dude, this is really like making me struggle. Like I'm having a hard time. The freedom it can create in a community, whether that's like one person who has like some kids that look up to them, or like a pastor on stage with a whole congregation, there's a permission that it gives people that they might not know that they were waiting for. So I think that's incredible. And I just want to commend you too. I think embarrassment is a really powerful emotion that I don't think we think about that very much when you grow up, because, you know, when you're a kid, it's like you trip and fall like 8 times a day, and that's embarrassing. And so you're used to feeling like, oh, my cheeks are red and I'm embarrassed, because it's like, that's what it is to be a kid.
Right.
And I think, as we grow up, like we kind of fall into societal norms, and we learn how to not embarrass ourselves.
Right.
And I know I work really hard to not feel embarrassed. But when I really break down some of my like anxiety responses, the things that are making me feel anxiety, at the core of it, sometimes there is this feeling of like, I would be so embarrassed if people knew that I felt this way about this thing. And the cool thing about what you said is, you said, I felt embarrassed because I've always been someone who is a finisher, who is a doer.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about you getting up in front of your congregation and sharing this is it's going back to what you and Roy talked about, going, my identity is not in being able to do things.
Right.
It's not in usefulness. It's not in being smart, being a good communicator. My identity is in God, and He's going to sustain me through this. And so it's crazy. Like when we push through that, embarrassment of like, I can't believe that I am not strong enough on my own to do this. Waiting on the other side is a reminder of like who we are, and that God stepped down into our mess at our most embarrassing. It is maybe a subtle way to say it, talk about brokenness in the world, but
think about the power, Peabod, of that. Just like, if I'm able, as a broken person, dealing with mental health issues, like serious, like if I'm able to like authentically be who I am in a group of people, and that group of people never looks down on me, embraces me, sustains me, supports me, that is, in human form, a version of unconditional love, which is the love of God. Right? So how powerful that would be for someone to experience that. And that's what the church is supposed to be. A picture of God's love. So doesn't matter what your issue is, you should be able to come in to that space and be like, here I am, guys, with all the cracks, all the smells, all the disgustingness. This is me. And the church would be like, okay. Get over here, sucker. Let's give you a hug and let's go. Right?
Yeah, I love that. Yes, I think that's exactly it. And I think that just kind of as we circle back to like where people are at watching this episode today, I think that the camps are either you're in a great church community and that's awesome and you're already there, or you're maybe looking about taking your first steps, maybe in your first church experience or your next church experience. And I think that's what we're looking for is a community that says we are all messy, like, come on in, the water's fine. Like we're all in this together. And I think that for people at home, if there is church hurt, if there were people who said like, you just got to trust God more and your mental health will go away, or pushing your issues to the side, that kind of stuff, that's not an example of what we're talking about, of what the hope is today. So I think like if people are, I think what I'm trying to say here, I think that for those people who are like, I feel this nudge to take the next step and to maybe find a community again, I think it's safe to say there are communities out there that probably won't be safe for you. Like there are people who don't understand where you're at, and God can use all of us in spite of our brokenness. But it's okay to feel like maybe this group of people over here isn't for me. That's okay. It's also important to go, the best version of what we can hope for on earth is a group of messy people still who are saying, come in. So, so I think there's this, you kind of have to weigh and talk to God about like, okay, when should I lean in and maybe say, hey, I didn't love how this was handled, and watch how that comes across. Because, as a pastor, I'm sure there are times where you're like, I wish I had handled that differently. But your job is not to be perfect and to handle everything perfectly. It's to, if someone says, hey man, this didn't go the way I wanted to, it's for you to be able to go, you're right, I'm so sorry. I want to keep walking with you together in relationship. And so that's the best case scenario.
The best case scenario.
Yes.
That's right. And it's like we were saying before we started the episode, and I think this is a good place to kind of sit, which is the reality is that the church was created by God, and the ideal situation is the description we have of the church that God created, that we read in the New Testament throughout it, to bear one another's burdens, that we're all connected, that the weak support the strong support the weak, et cetera, et cetera. Great. Just let's always realize that anything placed in the hands of humans, we're placing a beautiful, maybe even perfect design in imperfect vessels. So it's going to get screwed up. It just is. It's just going to get screwed up. We can talk about government, we could talk about society, like all of it is supposed to work. Family is supposed to work and it's supposed to be beautiful. Put it in the hands of people, they mess it up, right? So the church is not immune to that.
Yeah.
So the church that you find, like you said, the best case scenario is that it's trying to do what it's supposed to do, and it's trying and failing at its best.
Yeah.
But hopefully you're finding a place where there's grace, where there's forgiveness, where there's adjustments, flexibility, and love. And if you can find that in one place, awesome. And if you can get 60% of it, maybe that's the best you can do. But just remember, it's not going to go perfect.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yes, and there might even be seasons too. Like maybe you find a community you love and there are seasons where it's like, oh my gosh, this is like everything I was hoping for. And then something clunky happens and the pastor's going through something and so he's not functioning at his best or you know what, like this is all possible. And like praise be to God that he uses us despite our messy selves.
Yeah.
Because I think like, at the end of the day, anything good coming through the church is because of him anyways, and what an honor to get to partner with him. And so hopefully people can find communities where people are going like, this is all God, man, we're giving it back to him.
Yeah.
And there will be moments when, you know, we fall on our faces and we hope to just get up and say sorry and keep going.
Yeah, awesome. Well, there you go. You know, hopefully you're finding that community that can be there for you during your mental health journey. That's what we're praying and hoping for. And you know, we'd love if you want to leave us, you know, some questions in the comments. Maybe you're looking for a place and we can maybe help steer you one direction or the other, or maybe we become that community for you. Whatever it is, it's important for you to find it. So, and it's important for others to find it too, like finding this episode. So subscribe, like, share it with somebody who might be looking for that community as well. And we've got another conversation coming. So make sure you stay connected with us so you know when it's available, and we'll see you next time.